In this video, we will have a look at the role that the physical environment plays in a service delivery process and how we can fix this Ster Kinekor review. Ster Kinekor is a cinematic experience, so it's a cinema company that offers the latest and greatest movies to South African consumers. But then on hellopeter.com, they have a meager 1.6 out of 10 rating, and this is one of the reasons or one of the reviews that attests to why they have such a low review. And in today's video, we can talk about what Ster Kinekor can do to fix the physical environment and queues so that they don't continue to receive these reviews. Now, physical evidence as a form of communication, so wherever you go, whichever service or product or company that you walk into, this communicates what you see, what you hear, what you feel or you smell if you enter that environment, and this talks to the customer. If it's dirty, you will immediately get a negative impression towards this service organization or company. So the physical evidence and the physical environment communicates to the customer, and then almost every element in the Servicescape communicates to the recipient. There are three main types or elements of evidence that will determine whether the intended message was conveyed successfully or not, and we refer to, for example, the physical environment. That's a main one. So the architecture, the layout of the physical environment, the ambient conditions, does it smell great, do they have air cons, ventilation, and the social factors in the physical environment. So are the employees helpful, assistants, are they friendly, do they respect the customers, and are they willing to help all of the customers that enter the premises? That's one way to look at it. And then also the communications. How do they communicate on the website, on social media sites? Because this is also related to physical evidence in form of communication. So any type of communications. If there's a photo of the place on social media or on the website, and when you get to the venue and it's vastly different, for example, it's not that clean, or it's not sanitized, or it is really changed over the years and it's really disorganized and filthy, then this communicates a lot to your customer. And then also price. If we have a look at these three elements for Ster Kinekor, so the physical environment, obviously it's a cinema, and usually with the majority of them at the beginning of the day, obviously it's clean most times, but many reviews also attest to it's not that clean. So in this review, for example, filthy bathrooms and the cinemas. They didn't clean the cinema between the viewings or the shows. And this really creates frustration and a sense of different views for the customers. You pay a lot of money to have this experience in South Africa for a lot of consumers. And then if they enter a dirty cinema that's not cleaned up, there's popcorn and spice and cold drink and stains everywhere, then this will have a very negative impact and how people feel about the cinema. They might actually not return. And we will get to a framework for the internal responses to that. But then if we look at this closely, we touched on a physical environment and then communications. There was also a review about not having the age restriction displayed for the Batman movie, and then family booked for the kids, and then they didn't want one kid that looked younger than 16. They just denied this person entry into the movie cinema. And then also the customer complained about this because they showed them on the app, if you try to book the movie, or on the web version, then it didn't show the age restriction, and hence they thought they could book the movies. The price, in terms of competitors, Ster Kinekor offers a bit more in terms of value for money for the prices. They do communicate the prices per movie for each experience. For example, the Prestige, the normal 2D, the 3D, and then also the Prestige option, and then also the snacks and combos. They have more options as to the combos that you can book with your movie than their competitor in South Africa. So they have all of this information, and this communicates to the customer what they want to know, and it creates an impression. They also have Tuesday half price for movies, which really draws a lot of customers to go and view a movie on these days. They also have collaborations with Vitality, for example. It's a Discovery rewards program, and many others, like the Thank You reward system from Edcon and so on. So these are three things that really communicate to your customer, and they need to pay attention to these so that they avoid having reviews like filthy bathrooms. So if they just have staff appointed to have a look at these things, to make sure it's clean, to make sure the cinemas are clean in between shows, then they will avoid negative reviews. But we also refer to understanding the effects of the Servicescape on behaviour. So what would be the behaviour? Well, evidently, the behavior for this customer was to post this long negative review, giving them 1 star, mentioning that they would, if there was an option, they would give them a 0 star. Because as a child, they used to be so excited to visit the cinema, and now it's such a bad experience to them, having paid all of that money. So for service organizations like Ster Kinekor, they need to fully understand the impact that their physical environment has on their customers' behavior and the Servicescape employee, or the service employee behavior rather, and they need to understand the environment, behavior, interaction, and that influence. So obviously, there must be a reason that the employees do not want to basically perform the task they are supposed to, for example, cleaning the cinemas. There must be a reason. Either there isn't sufficient supervisory control, or there are other reasons, for example, a lack of or shortage of staff. Now, Zuidheimel and Berndt developed this framework, and this framework helps them to understand the influence of the Servicescape on customer and employee behavior, because the employee also has a reaction. For example, if the place is filthy and it's not being cleaned and the conditions aren't favorable, then they will have a negative experience working for Ster Kinekor. And this behavior from the employee and the customer is based on a stimulus organism response theory. Now, this is the framework that we will refer to, and you can see a lot of components that we will briefly touch on. So the physical environment I mentioned, there's also the holistic environment. So how does the employees and the customers perceive the Servicescape? As we move down this framework, we have internal responses. So a customer and employee, so employee responses at the top and customer responses at the bottom, will directly be determined by their perceived Servicescape in terms of ambient conditions, the space, layout and function, and sign symbols and artifacts. So if we zoom into this, we can also look at individual behaviors, so approach versus avoidance behaviors, social interactions. The Servicescape will influence the nature and quality of interactions. Obviously, if the layout is as such, or the signs and symbols indicate where a customer can find employees, then that can facilitate social interactions. And also internal responses, whether it's cognitive, emotional, or physiologically. Now let's have a look at that example. So now the bathrooms are filthy and the cinemas aren't clean, if you only focus on that point. If you enter the cinema and that is what you see, and you can add to that the sound is too loud or too low, but let's focus on too high, and the air cons are faulty, and the screens have more white noise, or it's too bright, for example. Now, what will happen for the customer? This is, for example, ambient conditions. The temperature, okay, the aircon does not work. I think that was supposed to be air quality. So given the lack of aircon, the quality of the air will be poor. It will be hot and humid. And paired with human sense, it will be very uncomfortable. Then noise, if the speakers are too loud, for example, in a shooting scene, you can just imagine. Then music, odors, which links with the air quality and temperature, and so forth. Then we have a look at space and function. With the prestige cinema, you have a lot of space because it is for a limited number of customers. The room is the same space, but we have fewer seats because it's leather lazy boys. So more people can sit there comfortably. So the layout is different, the equipment is different, and the furnishings are different from the standard cinema. Standard cinema might have less foot space, smaller aisles, and more seats, meaning less space per person. Sign symbols and artifacts. So obviously in a cinema, required by law, you need to indicate where you can find the fire extinguisher, where the exit points and entrance points are, and then also signage where your seats are, for example, row A to F and then 1 to 9, or whatever the case may be. Personal artifacts, there are also a lot of complaints for Ster Kinekor specifically, because they used to have polystyrene bowls for the popcorn, and now with the COVID situation, this has not returned to normal, and they still continue to use brown paper bags to provide customers with their popcorn, and then sachets for the spice. And then also the style of the decor, this will also have an impact on that. So if we look at those few examples, how do the employees perceive that? They will have the same experience because we will only focus on the customer in this video. In terms of the customer's responses, if the temperature is too high, the air quality and odors are really uncomfortable, too loud noises from the cinema, and the screen might be too bright, what are the cognitive, emotional, and physiological internal responses that they can experience. So cognitively, they will start believing that Ster Kinekor does not maintain the equipment well enough to service their customers, and therefore have the belief that they do not get value for money. In terms of categorization, we have one competitor in South Africa, New Metro, and then they will start categorizing, if they have experience with this other cinema, they will start categorizing these two. And maybe if they have a better experience from the competitors, start categorizing Ster Kinekor as below par or their second choice. And then also the symbolic meaning that if they don't get attention, there's no social interaction, nothing gets fixed from one experience to another, symbolically it will mean that Ster Kinekor really does not care. And this links to beliefs. In terms of emotional, with mood, if you came to the cinema excited like this person in the review, because it reminds them of childhood experiences, and then they find the bathrooms and the cinema very dirty, their mood will change immediately. They will start from being excited to become irritated, frustrated, angry, disappointed mostly. Then their attitude will change. They will have a positive attitude, get into the cinema, and immediately start developing a negative attitude. And if this is not fixed from Ster Kinekor's point of view, if they don't start cleaning the facilities, making sure everyone has a great experience in terms of making sure everything is standard with the noise levels, the air quality, layout and equipment management, fixing that, then this negative attitude will be reinforced. And that's not a good thing, because that will lead to behavior, which we will touch on shortly. In terms of physiological, if the sound is too loud, the air quality is too hot, for example, the temperature, and there are several uncomfortable odors, people will start developing pain, for example, ear pain, headaches. They will start becoming uncomfortable. Their movement will, if the seating arrangement is a bit constrictive or there's not a lot of food space, they will start becoming uncomfortable, and then if their movement is limited, this will also have an impact. And then there's also a physical fit element. Now, if we take everything in consideration, what are the end behaviors for these responses based on their perceptions of the Servicescape? Individually, basically, there will be no attraction anymore. There will be no commitment or desire to stay and explore more movie options. They will not have a desire to spend more money, and they will certainly not have a desire to return and carry out their plan to revisit the cinema. Instead, they will display avoidance behavior. On top right, you will see approach versus avoidance. In this negative review, they would rather be distracted from this experience and really find this unattractive. They will leave and do not want to explore. They will not spend their money. They will rather go to a competitor. They will not return, and they will not carry out the plan. Now, what is very important and what is lacking in most of these reviews, same as with the single out review, is the social interaction between and among customers and employees. A lot of the times the employees, because of their internal responses and behavior, they don't have a commitment to serve their customers. They just see it as, well, I clock in, I clock out, I don't have to do more than what I have to, and they become rude, they become irritated and frustrated by the customers that continue to complain, and they don't really have a sense of trying to solve the problem. And this is the case with managers as well. So Ster Kinekor really has a problem when it comes to the training that managers received, or their willingness really to solve problems that you have seen in this review. So the social interactions really need to be improved, because even if it happens that a customer finds a dirty cinema, if they report it, the situation can be fixed immediately if the manager of that specific branch jumps into action and tries to sort this immediately. They get the cleaning staff ready, show that they have control over the situation, and apologize to the customer, because that doesn't happen, and that's the problem. That's why people don't want to return, because of the lack of managerial interventions and interactions over there. They just go back into the office, say, no, you have to send a message to customer support, and then they will get back to you, and that's not how it's supposed to work. Ster Kinekor needs to empower their managers to deal with these situations and give them the willingness and incentive to do that as well. So in essence, this is how they can solve this review. If they use this framework and ensure the physical environment dimensions are as they are supposed to be and standard, then the perceived Servicescape will improve for the customers, which will change their responses. They will start believing it is a cinematic experience they would like to return to. They will have a positive attitude, excited mood. They will categorize them as a cinema that really takes into consideration how their customers feel, and then also won't have any headaches or pain or discomfort because they are fixing what customers complain about. I hope you can use this framework to ensure your physical environment is correct and serves your customers so that they have a desire to return and spend the money as opposed to competitors. Thanks for watching.